Welcome to GTC's Teaching Tidbits. Each episode, we explore a teaching technique, tip, practice, or idea from faculty for faculty. So joining me today is a familiar face in our Teaching Tidbits series and also in our Blackboard Ultra series as well. Lee McMinn is here from Curriculum and Instructional Support Center, CISC. And for those of you who are new to Teaching Tidbits, Lee also teaches some courses here for us at GTC, primarily math courses. So welcome, Lee.
Thanks, Rachel.
I'm so glad to have you back. I know you're a frequent guest on our Teaching Tidbits series, both of them.
Yeah, I imagine everybody gets tired of hearing from me every.
Nah, I don't think so. Plus, you're always sharing just a wealth of information with each of these episodes that we do. And especially here with the start of a new academic school year, and this is the start of our 4th season of GTC Teaching Tidbits. As we head into the new academic year, GTC has chosen to shift back to using Respondus tools for online test proctoring. And so Lee is here to give us a brief overview or refresher, if you will, as we convert back to using Respondus Lockdown Browser for those online testing situations. So Lee, I'm going to turn it over to you to share your teaching tidbit.
Thanks, Rachel. And yeah, this is a overview, if you will. Basically, I'm going to walk through how you would set up a test to use the Respondus Lockdown Browser. It's not very difficult, but you need to follow these steps. Here we're looking at one of my practice courses, and you can see here basic quiz A. Make this full size. It shows proctored. This is the indicator that you'll see on a test that uses Respondus Lockdown Browser. Just as when we had Proctorio, there was a remotely proctored tag on the title. Here you're going to see the little shield symbol with the word proctored at the end of the due date or on that line. So a couple things. Respondus Lockdown Browser works a little bit differently than Proctorio and HonorLock. It has what we call a dashboard, where that's where you can go and set up Respondus on all tests at the same time if you wanted to. You don't have to do it test by test or in the test settings. So that makes it a little bit easier. You could have all your tests created at the beginning of the semester, go into the Lockdown Browser dashboard, and then set up Lockdown Browser for each test there without having to go into each individual test. What you will see, there's a couple ways you can get to the Respondus Lockdown Browser dashboard. Over on the left, under Details and Actions, you could come down to Books and Tools. And if you click on that, the right panel opens up, and at the bottom, you'll see Respondus Lockdown Browser Dashboard. Notice there's not a circle with a plus. The circle with the plus means you can add a link to that in the content area, and we don't have that capability here. But to enter the Lockdown Browser Dashboard, you would just click on this link right here, and it opens the dashboard. Now I'm going to close this again to show you another way that you can access that. And you can do that through the test settings. If you're working on a test and you're in the test settings over on the right-hand side, in the same area where you saw Proctorio and HonorLock under the assessment security, you'll see a link for Lockdown Browser Dashboard there. It takes you to the same place. So you can see as I click on it here, it takes me to the same location. Now here in the dashboard, it shows me all the test and possible assignments that you can apply Lockdown Browser to. So in the columns on the right-hand side, it shows if you are using Lockdown Browser and if you're using Respondus Monitor. Now what Respondus Monitor is, that's where it's recording the student's webcam and the student's screen if you choose it to. So you can see on my basic quiz 1A test, I am requiring Lockdown Browser and Respondus Monitor. Now, if I want to apply this to the unit test 5 that I had created that we were looking at earlier, I just click on the drop down arrow and choose settings. Inside of settings, it opens up a panel, and I first make the choice, do I want to use Lockdown Browser? And I would check that box off, and then it gives me some additional settings. Under advanced settings, I have the option to lock students into the browser, into the Respondus Lockdown Browser, until they submit the test. That's kind of almost similar to the forced completion that we had in original, but actually a little bit better. It just means until they submit the test, they will not be able to exit the Lockdown Browser. I don't encourage you to use that, but it's there. At the end of these lines, you see the word explain. All you do is put your point on there, and it will give you a little pop-up window explaining what that feature is or does. So I'm not going to go through each one of these. If you want to allow a student to access a website during the test, this is really important. You have to do two things. First, you need to check off here, and you would enter the domain only of the website you wanted them to see. That means you do not include the HTTPS, you do not include www or things like that. You would just include the domain. For example, google.com. That would be all I would enter if I wanted them to go to Google. Now, that's not really a good example because you're allowing them just to that one area. If it has links on that page that you're giving them access to, those links will not work if it leaves that page or leaves that domain. So you have to be careful about that. I can tell you that StatCrunch that they use in Math 120 is a good example of that works, and it works there. So you would put the domain here, and then in a question or either in the text of the test, you would put a link to that area so they could open it within the test. All right. After you take care of those advanced settings, then you need to decide, do you want to use Respondus Monitor? Again, this is what the part where you can record the student's screen and record the student's web camera. If you do that, you just choose the second option. It's going to give you a little information page that says, hey, are you sure this is what it does? Are you sure you want to do this? You just click continue to Respondus Monitor. And then just like Proctorio and HonorLock had startup screens that you would go through, there's some startup screens here. There's two options that you cannot change. That's the first, which is a webcam check. That's just making sure that the web camera is connected to the computer and then it works, that Respondus can connect to it. The last thing is a facial detection check. That's to be sure that your face is being picked up by the camera. All right. These other options where you see check boxes, they're up to you. You see you can preview them by simply clicking on the preview button. It'll open another window and show you what that item is. Some of these that have edit text will let you actually go in and edit the text that you see in that preview. All right. Personally, I'm going to tell you, I may on the very first test or the practice test, I would give them the additional instructions and maybe guides and tips. That's to tell them how they best can navigate and work through Lockdown Browser while they're taking a test. After the first test or the practice test, I'm probably not going to use those options. Do I want to take a picture of the student? Maybe. If you're recording their web camera, do you need to? Probably not. So that's up to you. Showing the ID. Again, that's, where they pull out their ID and they hold their ID up to the web camera and it takes a picture of it. I generally only do that on the first test because if I'm recording their web camera, I can go back to that first test and look and see their ID. If it looks like it's a different person, you could do that. But whether you show this every time is totally up to you. And then the environment check, that's again where you have them scan the local area right around their computer. Again, that option is up to you. I generally don't do that. There's been a lot of legal issues going on with that and people questioning that sort of stuff. If you do use the environment check, make sure that your students understand they're only scanning the area right around where they're taking the test. They do not have to scan their whole room or anything like that. Now, below that is facial detection options. These are checked off by default. Again, you can look at the explain sequence. If you don't want them to get a notice during the test that their face is no longer visible in the camera, you can uncheck those. Now, here's where this is kind of important, and I suggest you leave them turned on. When they get into the test, and I'll show you this in just a minute, we'll do it as the preview student. They don't see their web camera picture on the screen. So you may want to give them warning if you want to be sure their face stays in the screen area. You may want to leave this turned on so it pops up and gives them a warning that their face is no longer detected. And we'll look at this in just a second. This recording options, this says beta. That beta is actually going away probably next month. But this is where you choose to record the student's screen. All right. So if you want to, before Respondus didn't have this until just last year. Because of our suggestions to them and many other schools' suggestions to them, they've made this possible. So that really lifts up Respondus's capabilities. But this actually records the student screen. And then the advanced setting. A couple things. If you have a few students that want to come to the testing center to take the test for whatever reason, they don't want to install the Respondus app, or they want to come to the testing center, you would check off this first box, and then you would put a password in here. You get to choose the password. This is the password that you would give to the testing center. Now, they still will be using the lockdown browser. It just won't be using the camera or recording the screen because they're in a proctored environment, but it still will use the lockdown browser. This last option, no, not the last option, the very last one, not the checkbox where it says enter a demo student name for the instructor. This would be your preview user account. So if you want to test this out with your preview user, please put that in here. Otherwise, we get billed, or that takes away a license from our true students. Okay. And we're paying for licenses to use the monitor side of it. Okay. So I strongly ask that you put your preview user account in there. If you're not sure what your preview user name is, turn on your preview user. When you exit the preview user, save it so they stay in the grade book. Go to the grade book and look and see what the preview user name is. It should be your username _ preview user. Once you have that set, just click save and close. And it looks like the screen went blank, but if you notice my scroll bar is down at the bottom, it just collapses everything and you need to scroll up. And you can see that I now have this set on this test. Before we go and look at it, I want to point out a couple of things on the dashboard. You have your dashboard. There's the getting started. So if you want some information, maybe some information you want to include in your start here part of the course at the beginning, talks about creating a practice quiz. There's some more information about Respondus Monitor here as well. There's some video tutorials for how to do different things using Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor. There's support guides here and some other things you can look at. So just be aware of what's available to you in the dashboard. All right, now I'm going to jump over and jump into my preview student. Now, guess what? I'm not going to be able to get into it as a student because we're running Zoom at the same time. But what I want to show you is just what the student sees. So when they see the test, you can see the tests that are proctored. If I want to take the test as a student, I would simply click on it. Notice here under assessment security, it tells the student that they need the lockdown browser and a webcam to complete the assessment. That means they need to download the app. Now, they're always going to see this. If they've already downloaded the app, they don't need to do it again. They only need to do it once. So if they've already downloaded the app and I have on my computer, all I have to do is click Start Attempt. When I click Start Attempt, it's going to ask me, do I want to open Lockdown Browser? I click on that to open it, and it gives me some information. Now, it may have just cut me off, but I'm using double monitors. I could not go all the way into the lockdown browser because it was wanting to turn off other programs that I had running in the background that may be recording screens or giving me the ability to take screenshots. For example, I have Snagit on my computer. It will ask me to turn that off or give me the option for Respondus to turn it off for me. All right, so same thing running Zoom. So I didn't get all the way in, but once they get into the lockdown browser, it's just another browser. They'll know it starts recording because in the top right-hand corner of the screen, it'll be a little red button that says it's recording your webcam and your screen. They just don't see the webcam image there. All right. So let's jump back to the instructor. How do you, as the instructor, check to see the results? Again, this is where you want to go to the Lockdown Browser dashboard. On the dashboard, if you have any submissions, notice I would click on the same drop-down arrow where I would modify or create the settings. I would choose class results. And here I can see the results for this user. I can click the drop-down arrow, and there I can play and see the web camera shot that it takes. And then if it's recording my screen, that'll be played here as well. So you just click the play, and you can watch what happens. You can fast forward. You can zoom in and that sort of stuff. You can zoom in on the screen as well. If you need to take any notes, you can take notes here about something that you want to keep on record and do that. So this is basically how you can review the videos that come in through Lockdown Browser. All right, so that's the basics of Lockdown Browsers. Now, students, again, do have to install the Lockdown Browser app. Instructors need to install it if you want to do that with your preview student. If you don't have that app installed on your computer, your Greenville Tech computer, you'll probably need to contact OIT. They were looking to push that out. At least they've done it to all the lab computers in the testing center, but you may need to request that be installed on your laptop. Other than that, that is Lockdown Browser and how it works. If you have any questions, of course, as Rachel will remind you, you're welcome to contact me or anyone here at CISC.
Thank you, Lee, for that refresher. I know for those who've used it before, this will just be a good reminder. And then for those who are new to it, it's a great little preview of how user-friendly it is, really. So thank you for sharing that with us today. I know as we get ready to start a new semester, this is going to be one of the important things people are going to want to know, getting ready for their students to come back and for classes to start. So thank you so much.
Let me say one other thing too, Rachel. Sure. I meant to say at the beginning, the one thing Respondus Lockdown Browser does not do, it does not work with third-party tools. Okay, so if your tests are on McGraw-Hill or Pearson's site or anything like that, Respondus Lockdown Browser is not going to work on those tests. It doesn't create a pass-through like HonorLock or Proctorio did. All right, so what we suggest, and we've suggested this no matter what tool we're using, whether it was HonorLock or Proctorio, if your publisher has a proctoring tool available on their site and you want to do testing on their site, we suggest and almost mandate now, since Respondus Lockdown Browser doesn't work with third-party tools, that you use the proctoring tools on the publisher site. Many of them are partnered with Respondus Lockdown Browser. So again, that's something you'll need to talk with your customer service rep about.
Oh, good. Thank you. Good reminder to definitely check into that if you're using those third-party tools there. Well, thank you so much, Lee. And as Lee said, if you would like to continue the conversation, please feel free to reach out to Lee. I've put his email on the screen here, lee.mcminn@gvltec.edu. But also they have a great staff and team over there in CISC. So you can also reach out to them at their department email, CISCstaff@gvltec.edu. And a member of their team will reach out, connect with you, help get all of your questions answered. And as always, if you have questions you'd like to see answered or specific topics you'd like to see covered in our Teaching Tidbits episodes, please let me know. Send me an email at rachel.cobb@gvltec.edu. We'd love to feature you or a colleague covering those topics that you want to hear about. So please let me know, and we'll be sure to include those in future episodes. Well, that's this week's GTC Teaching Tidbits, and we'll see you next time.